taxes, salt taxes, they're referred to. And if you're not familiar with this, what happens is places with bad tax policy like New York or California, and they really tax the daylights out of their citizens in property tax, for example. And as a result, these salt taxes, there's been this allowance on federal tax to deduct that. And what that simply means is states with terrible tax policies impact the rest of the states that have good tax policies. What's going to happen with that going into the Trump administration? Good question. Brandon Arnold, the executive vice president of the National Taxpayers Union, is here to discuss it. Brandon, nice to have you on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so salt taxes, as they're called, in New York, Illinois, California, these states that have terrible policies, Massachusetts, the list goes on, basically get to deduct that. I don't get to deduct my property tax because it's not high enough, but they do, and there's been limits, sometimes 15 grand, sometimes 30 grand, but it's real money they save by doing this, right? Where are we in the conversation? What is the deduction today? I'm sure you have some idea.
Yeah, the deduction right now is $10,000. That's a lot of money when you talk about paying $10,000 in state and local taxes. But because of other changes that were made in 2017, most people outside of the states that you mentioned, New York, New Jersey, California, and so forth, only really high earners in those states are really up against this cap by and large. Now, what they're talking about doing on Capitol Hill, a delegation of Republicans from those high tax states want to boost that cap up to $200,000. Again, we're not talking about $200,000 of earnings, which is already pretty high. We're talking about people that pay $200,000 just in state and local taxes. Essentially, we're talking about millionaires, multimillionaires, and they are holding hostage this tax package saying we're not going to vote for it unless you give tens of thousands of tax relief to millionaires in our states and districts. And I think that is really nonsensical.
I don't think that's good. I mean, because here, basically a third, roughly. If you have a tax write-off, if you're in one of the higher tax brackets, if you're at 37%, for example, take 37% of 200,000, that'd be $74,000. Quick math in my head. So they wouldn't, they'd save 74,000 actual dollars that didn't get paid in, these millionaires and billionaires. So $74,000 on a $200,000 tax bill, they never pay in, right?
That's exactly right. And that creates a huge budget math problem as we're trying to pass a tax bill and do so in a fiscally responsible way. Because, again, we have a $36 trillion debt right now. So, yes, we need to extend these tax cuts, but we simply can't be inefficient and reckless in the manner that we do so. That was the main reason in 2017 we put that $10,000 cap in the first place, is to make the bill more affordable, more reasonable in its size and scope. We need to direct those tax cuts to people that need them the most, and we need to direct them to job creators and people that are going to add to our economy in a positive way, not simply to millionaires and billionaires in some of these really, really poorly run states and districts. They need to get their act under control. They need to fix the fiscal messes that they've made in Albany and Sacramento and Trenton and elsewhere, instead of simply putting a Band-Aid on that in the form of this salt deduction.
Well, exactly right. And again, I come back to what I said off the top here. We were actually talking about this in the break as well. Why would I, in a place that doesn't have taxes that are exorbitant like that, why would I, and what if you're in a really low tax state like Tennessee or Florida or New Hampshire now, why would those people be forced to subsidize? Because that's really what you're asking them to do. These people in high tax states that have terrible tax policy. Why should New Hampshire subsidize New York, or why should I subsidize California? That's what I find grating here, to say the least, Brandon.
Yeah, and it's not just tax policy. These states are taxing their citizens too much. They're also spending far too much. When you look at spending on a per-person basis in states like New York and California, it's nearly double that in states like North Carolina and Texas and Florida. And guess where everybody's leaving for? People are leaving these high tax states and going to lower tax jurisdictions. And again, they're not just lower tax jurisdictions, they're lower spending jurisdictions. So why are those people that are running their states properly, attracting growth, creating jobs, why are those folks subsidizing the people that can't get their act together in New York?
Here's the biggest concern, though. You're saying it's Republicans that are pushing this. Republicans, which means you've only got a a razor-thin margin in the House. So if Republicans from New York or California or Illinois, the handfuls that come out of those states say, we can't do it unless we get this, nothing happens.
Right. Yeah, they're basically holding the bill hostage, and they have the ability to do so. In 2017, we lost 13 House Republicans. They voted no against the Trump tax cuts. The majority of those folks did so because of the SALT cap that was put into place. So if they do the same thing again, obviously the bill dies very easily. We only have a couple votes to spare. That number is actually going to fall because three members of the House of Representatives are going into the Trump administration. So once they go in, those are 3 fewer Republican votes. So this is an enormous problem, and we're probably going to have to increase the SALT cap a little bit. But I'm hoping that's a modest increase because this is a deduction that probably shouldn't exist in the first place. And the notion of lifting it all the way to $200,000 as they're discussing, again, I think it's just complete nonsense, really, really wasteful, inefficient way to operate a tax code.
Well, Brandon, we get in there, make yourself heard and say this is ridiculous. We can't support this. Speak up for me. I'm a taxpayer. And everybody else. Appreciate all the work you do, Brandon. And hopefully they'll come to their senses on this one.
I hope so.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Take care.
There you have it. Greatly appreciated.